to test the faster tools in a flood scenario, which is an event. They had a big event in, I believe it was 2016, which is what his story will be about today. Professor Dwayne Habigans from Millersville University in Pennsylvania in the United States. He's the head of the emergency management master's program there, but also a practitioner. And he responded to an active shooter event in an Amish community in Pennsylvania called Nickel Mines. Dr. Julio Ruiz Palomino, he's also a part of the FASTER project in Madrid, and he's working in their medical response team, SUMA 112. So he'll talk about experiences during the pandemic response. And last but not least, Harris Giorgio, another FASTER member who joined the practitioners panel earlier today from the Hellenic Rescue Team Attica in Greece. His testimonial will be about recent urban and suburban disasters in Attica. And he has a lot of information to share. He is a great resource for our project. So we have seen that crises do not respect local, regional, national, or even continental boundaries. And the collaboration and lessons learned among the responders, thankfully, do cross these boundaries as well. So in part, thanks to events like this symposium, people are able to learn from each other. And this has been a great opportunity to do so. I only wish we had more time. So before we go on, I just take a quick moment to thank the organizers and hosts of the symposium, the team at KGU, Dr. Yuri Tirino, Yasushi Miyazaki, Christian Espinosa, and all of their colleagues. And a quick thank you to all of the contributors as well for your participation in this event and the information that you shared and the time that you gave us. I give the floor back to Dr. Yuri to begin the practitioner testimonial session. Thank you. Dr. Yuri, sorry to interrupt. I believe you are muted. The sound is not coming through.
I'm so sorry. So yes, I was just mentioning that thank you very much for your kind introduction. And we are about to begin. And I wanted to let you know that at the end of the presentations, we'll have a very small message from one of our collaborators here in Japan, who was also a part of the practitioners workshop, but who had a special request to transmit a message to everyone. So with that, I will start the presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kiyoshi Murakami. I am currently in Rikuzen Takata City in Ishikawa Prefecture, Japan. I am the CEO of the Rikuzen Takata Agency Company, as well as being a visiting professor at the Tohoku University. Today, I would like to first thank you for the opportunity to speak. My presentation is about the great earthquake and tsunami disaster of eastern Japan, which happened on the 11th of March 2011. And I'll be focusing on Rikuzen Takata City, which was in an absolute state of catastrophe when this natural disaster hit. I will show you some photos as well as a video, but I must warn you that some of the scenes are extremely confronting. So please do consider how it may affect you before you go ahead and watch and listen to my presentation. Now, I would like to get started with the presentation. First slide. The content on the slides is actually in English. I am doing my presentation in spoken Japanese, and it is then being interpreted or translated into English, I'm told. Contents slide. During the actual symposium, there'll be a panel discussion which I'll participate in. And so the third, fourth, and fifth items of contents I would actually like to discuss in the panel. So today I will be looking at the tsunami disaster itself after I make an introduction. Next slide. In Rikuzen Takata City, prior to the disaster that happened on the 11th of March 2011, it was really a city with natural beauty. It was known for its natural beauty, for beautiful beaches, for swimming. In the slide you can see Takata Matsubara, the pine tree beach, and it really was a popular tourist spot within Japan with lots of tourists visiting, and was also known for gourmet foods, both from the mountains as well as seafood. The oysters were the most expensive and high quality oysters in Japan, selling at the highest price in Tokyo. And there are also California cockles, which are quite rare and expensive in Tokyo and not available all over. So after you've listened to my presentation, it would be wonderful if you do at some stage have the chance to visit. Next slide. Rikuzen Takata City is located in Iwate Prefecture, and it's the southernmost coastal area of the Iwate Prefecture. It's located along the coast, and 80% of the land within the area is mountainous, while the remaining 20% is considered flat. On the next slide, you can see the the situation, how the town looked before the tsunami happened. On the following slide, you can see just after the earthquake at 3:10 p.m. At 2:46 p.m., an earthquake of magnitude 9.0 occurred, and approximately 25 minutes later, this photo was taken showing the situation. And as you can see in the picture, the buildings basically remain intact. Nothing seems to be broken or damaged. Buildings in Japan, particularly wooden buildings, are built to be quite resistant to earthquakes. So as you can see, there was no visible damage to the buildings from earthquakes at the time, just after the earthquake at 3:10 p.m. It was an enormous earthquake, but people were fairly relaxed about their safety, although there were, of course, broken dishes, furniture had fallen over, and there was, of course, a cleanup needed inside people's homes. At this point in time, at 3:10 p.m., there had already been a large tsunami warning issued. And in my presentation today, I'd like to look at how advanced technology can be useful in the case of a disaster. So from that perspective, it can be said that as an early warning, an alarm was sounding very loudly saying a tsunami is expected, a large tsunami is expected, please evacuate immediately. And on the next slide, you can see at 3:25 p.m., the tsunami is just on the beach. It has just overcome a 5.5 meter resistance wall. And at this stage, quite a number of people had still not attempted to evacuate, were still preparing to evacuate, were in the town as this at the point in time shown in this slide in the photo. You can see in the picture there are some people about to get into their car, and there were quite a number of people in this situation, and this was true not just of this city, this location, but various locations. So to try and escape from a tsunami when it is just right in front of you, you can see in the following slide, and I'm showing the next slide now, you can see how that situation is. You can see in the photo how powerful the water is. You can see how terrifying a tsunami is, how immensely powerful it is. And we human beings really need to face up to the power of tsunamis and deal with that. Just 4 minutes later, as you can see in the next slide, at 3:29 p.m., the entire town has already been wiped out. In the next slide, it's 3:35 p.m. and you can see just how terrifying, how destructive a tsunami is. Even within the category of natural disasters, you have earthquakes alone, separate from tsunamis, and you have avalanches. But the situation when a tsunami occurs is really completely different. You can't compare it. So we need to be aware of this point. Next slide. This is a photo taken from the rooftop of the fire station in the city. As you can see, the tsunami is already in the town, and I would like you to take a look at how the situation was. This was 3:27 p.m. on the next slide, and this was taken from the third floor rooftop of the fire station. People had evacuated up to the third floor, but soon this will become unsafe and they will need to evacuate further as the town and the buildings are swallowed by the tsunami. You can see in these photos, which really are quite horrific, just how terrible the situation was. I would now like to show you a video. I do warn you again that there are scenes, visual scenes and voices which are really confronting. As you could see in the video, the firefighters were on the rooftop on the third floor, but this was not high enough. And as the tsunami approached and the sea level rose, they realized they needed to get higher. They were yelling to climb up the metal tower, which was on the roof top. The tsunami was up to 18 meters high at its peak. And as you can see in the next slide, the entire town is completely covered by the water of the tsunami. And I think how this situation is managed is a really important point. But I must say that I think the way things are managed up until this point are actually the most important pre-disaster, before the tsunami actually hits. In this slide, you can see the City Hall, the white building in the center of the photo. Here in this photo, the tsunami has reached the City Hall and is at a level of between 15 and 17 meters. So when the photo is taken at 3:46 p.m., 15:46, it has actually already subsided a little. So this is 10 minutes after the peak of the tsunami at this location. The City Hall building is mainly a 3-story building and in part 4-story. And you can see there are people, residents of the town, as well as employees of the City Hall on the rooftop. There were 400 people approximately working in the City Hall, and 100 of those people lost their lives as victims of the tsunami. And of course, as you can imagine, the survivors, the 300 survivors, also lost family members, lost their homes, and lost their workplace, the City Hall, because in general, all public facilities in the city were wiped out. In the next slide, you can see the Miracle Pine. And just to add, at this stage, all communication facilities, all electricity has been wiped out. But miraculously, one pine tree out of 70,000 pine trees that had lined the beach, just one pine tree survived. So this is known in Japan now as the Miracle Pine. On the next slide, which I'm told is a photo taken the following morning, you can see the aftermath of the tsunami. In the next slide, you can see the first responders. Of course, police and Japan's Self-Defense Force personnel were dispatched immediately and began searching through the wreckage. In the next slide, you can see just the complete devastation. Another slide with the sunrise, again, complete devastation. In the following slide, you can see the city community center. This was actually designated as an evacuation point, as a safe place, and people had evacuated here, but unfortunately, it turned out not to be safe in the case of this tsunami, and approximately 120 people lost their lives in this center. In the next slide, I show a summary of the numbers. There were over 24,000 people living in the town, and 1,760 people lost their lives. The number of displaced people who lost their place to live, is over 13,500. So the situation post-tsunami is that there are no buildings left to live in or to stay in. On the next slide, you can see Rikuzen Takata City and San Francisco. And these areas are both presented at the same scale so that you can compare the scale of this event with something that might be more familiar. The blue area is the disaster affected area. So the approximate area of the blue highlighted area, so comparing the blue area to the size of San Francisco City, the blue area, the affected area, is about 1/3 to half of the surface area of the city of San Francisco, to give you a reference point. And within the blue highlighted area, you can see 2 areas circled in red. These areas in the last 10 years have been raised. So the level of the land has been raised 10 meters. And this area, the 2 areas put together that have been raised 10 meters, are about equivalent to the area of downtown San Francisco. So you can imagine, to raise the level of the land 10 meters for the entire downtown San Francisco is an enormous feat. The next slide shows life at an emergency shelter. I say a shelter, and it is an evacuation center, but this is an ad hoc emergency shelter. It was not one of the designated centers because all the designated evacuation centers were destroyed in the tsunami in this case. So people ended up in these ad hoc emergency shelters, just surviving there day by day, basically. And as an aside, the maximum time that some people spent in this shelter or in shelters ended up being approximately 5 months. So from the 11th of March 2011 until the 6th of October. So 5 months living in a shelter. On the next slide, I raise the question, would advanced technology save people's lives in the case of a tsunami? And my short answer is that it is extremely difficult. It is unlikely that advanced technology will make an enormous difference to saving lives in the case of a tsunami. But what is crucial and does make a difference is to have an integrated and broad spread consistent early warning system. An early warning system is a key aspect of the advanced technology. And this is particularly before a tsunami happens or before any disaster occurs, is to have an effective integrated early warning system. In the case of a tsunami, it basically destroys or kills every living thing in its path. In the event of a tsunami, you're left with no electricity, no communication. Phones, including mobile phones, would not work at all. On the next slide, before we go to the next slide, I would also like to add that a well-planned evacuation program is essential. In the 10 years since this disaster happened, or 11 years since the disaster happened, new technologies are constantly being developed. But with or without technology, what's really important is evacuation drills, fire drills, earthquake drills, the existence of a well-planned and practiced evacuation program. So one of our main learnings from actually experiencing this huge tsunami 11 years ago is just how important not just having an evacuation program, but how you practice it is so crucial, and that, as I said, that's one of our key learnings. You need to have disaster safety drills, and you need to create a communication method and system. Now we have various online technologies and phones that are more effective, but having a backup system that is correctly implemented is also crucial. And I think I can say that the technology we have now, the internet technologies and phone systems we have now, do have backup plans. They are designed to be backed up and to continue working even in the event of a disaster. So this is one big difference, and this is also crucial. And my final point on this slide is that local community-based disaster preparedness is extremely important. And this is a very orthodox point, but for the individual residents to have a disaster plan and to be prepared is really infinitely more important than any technology that we have at present. So my conclusion is that advanced technology is fantastic and is so important. So it's crucial that we use all the advanced technology that we can and keep on creating it. The reality is, however, that once a tsunami happens, it's very hard to say this, but there are not going to be all that many survivors. And so from the point that a tsunami actually happens, technology is not particularly useful in saving lives. To be realistic, what technology is useful for in this case is things like drones being used to assess damage and search for bodies, for human remains. That is a sad reality, I believe. We have a panel discussion ahead of us, and in that I will look at how we use technology in the reparation and recovery efforts. And in the case of this city, Rikuzen Takata, we can look at what happened there, how it was rebuilt as a completely new city. I'd like to focus on these topics during the panel discussion, so I hope to see you there. Thank you very much for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Here is Roberto Cremonini from the Regional Environment Agency in Piemonte, Italy. And first of all, I wish to thank my co-authors, Riccardo Conte and Luca Menzio from the Regional Civil Protection of Piemonte. And finally, I wish to thank the organizing committee for inviting us for this short talk. Let's move to the outline. The talk is divided in two parts. First of all, we will describe our warning system for hydrological risk. It's a long-term process running since the late 19th. And it comes from large floods that occurred in Piemonte in 1994. Although this system is very operational since a long time, still some gaps are existing. And the second part, we're dealing with these gaps. And I will show also some results from FASTER project. And finally, I will discuss I will propose some conclusion and some thoughts. Here on the left, you can see the last flooding events that hit Piemonte the past fall in October 2021. Here in the maps, you see the total amount of precipitation recorded. What is exceptional is the very localized event, and we recorded the European record for daily precipitation with 1,000 millimeter in 24 hours. And the effects are shown in the picture. Let's move to the warning system process. Our warning system is based on three bricks. First of all, if we consider rivers, soils, and our region as a complex physical system, we need the initial conditions. So these are provided by a dense and monitoring system. So the first brick of this warning process is made by a dense ground hydrological and meteorological network, more than 400 weather stations. But it's also made by weather radars, by satellite observation, and by non-conventional sensors. All these systems provide the initial conditions. Then we need to move in the future, and we move to the future by numerical prediction, numerical models predictions. First of all, the NWP, numerical weather prediction models, but also hydrological models, landslide models, and some heuristic models. But the most relevant brick in this process is the risk scenarios. Some warning systems are based on thresholds. So if the amount of forecasted 24-hour precipitation is above certain thresholds, then a warning is issued. In Italy, and in particular in Piemonte, the situation is really different. What we issue a warning for a certain forecasted scenarios. So we describe what is going on and what is happening. For different scenarios, different colors are associated. For normal condition, green, to very extreme and severe condition, red. So moving from green to red means moving from more intense and more widespread phenomena. So the region is divided in 11 sub-areas, and daily for each areas, a corresponding color is assessed. This corresponding color is assessed according to the foreseen scenarios. So in the case of the worst one, red scenarios, we expect large floods, heavy precipitation first, then large floods, landslide, diffuse landslides, so very, very critical conditions. On the other side, for example, in the case of yellow code, we expect very, very localized events that can be even intense, but they are short, long-lasting. They are very, very localized. This is the typical condition for example, due to the summer thunderstorms. So daily, the output of this system, this process, are bulletins. These bulletins are produced 365 days per year. Moving from left to the right, and in the left, we see the warning bulletins for each areas a color corresponding to the scenarios, foreseen scenarios is assessed. The columns describe the different phenomena expected from floods, landslide, or local flooding due to the severe thunderstorm or snowfall, heavy snowfall. And the first columns represent the forecast for the next 12 hours, and the other columns represent the scenarios foreseen for the next day up to 36 hours. In the middle, we see the weather forecast for relevant phenomena. So heavy rainfall or heavy snowfall, but also strong wind condition, low visibility condition, low temperature or high temperature. And last but not the least, the river floods, the river condition forecasted. So this bulletin, in this bulletin, some discharge value are reported for the main rivers in Piemonte, and the condition for the next 36 hours plus tendency are reported. But this is only part of the story. So the new social media, the network, the incoming network, and the multiple channels to diffuse warning are now available. And then we develop several apps. We open a Twitter channel. We develop BOT Telegram. All these tools are used to spread warnings to the citizens in a reliable way, in an effective way. So this is a long, as I mentioned before, is a long story coming from the late 19th. And it seems that everything is running well, but gaps are still existing. So especially when we are in the red condition, some gaps are still present, are still there in the emergency management. First of all, so there is a scarce knowledge on local scenarios and their evolution. It's very hard for us from the main center in Torino to know what is happening in some remote places. Secondly, especially during the red scenarios, it's hard to get the big picture. So to understand really what is happening as a big picture. And finally, often limited communication happens between the central emergency room and the first response. FASTER project in this way address these points and try to enhance the capability of first responders for in terms of situational awareness and communication. But let's move to see how the emergency management is made in Piemonte. So we have 4 phases during the flooding events. The first phase is the attention phase. In this phase, all the system verify its readiness to respond. So everything is checked, working properly, and we are ready for something that is happening. So when we understand that something relevant is happening, we move to pre-alarm phase, where we open central operational room, but also remote operational rooms and some surveillance of the territory in the most critical points areas. And then the third phase is the alarm. So flooding is occurring, large flood, we are in a critical condition, so the action are each action is for safeguard our citizens and population. And then it's when the normal conditions are recovering, we move to the post-event phase, where essential services like drinkable waters, communication, roads, railways are trying to be reestablished. So in all these phases, something is missing, particularly during the alarm phase, where everything is under stress condition. There is a need of timely, real-time, complete and detailed communication of a team, from team of first responders to the operational center. This to coordinate properly the activities. And only to having this big picture of what's going on is really mandatory to be effective on the ground. Especially during the floods, even relevant first picture, first reports of flooded areas. And this can be improved using drones and making some campaign especially during the alarm phase, but even during the post-event phase. And this picture comes from the Avigliana pilot, where we test some flights, some records during the FASTER campaign. Also, it's relevant, are relevant also the condition where first responders are working. Sometimes they are working in extreme condition, and also knowing biometric condition of first responders is relevant, and the knowledge of these parameters is relevant also in the operational room to coordinate activities and to make action effective. Communication, we talk about the lack of communication between remote areas and central rooms. During the FASTER project, the FASTER bot, the chatbot was experimented, was tested. And here in the following slide, I will show you some interesting cases. Here you can see Piemonte, and each circle represents a number of messages issued from a remote area to the central operational room. The number inside is the number, the message. We can go into detail. Here we can see the detail over Torino and some example of messages. The most relevant attribute of messages, mandatory attribute, are obviously geolocation, so exact location of the message, and the time when the message was issued. Here we can see some example. By the messaging, we can ask for help, we can ask for devices, but also we can report even some managed survey on hydrological level of the rivers, for example. Here I can show an interesting example in a remote place, 70 kilometers far from Torino. There is also a weather reports. So visibility is a big issue from automatic instruments, and local reports are very valuable, especially if you plan to make a flying or a survey by air. So here in this case, the first responder reported low visibility condition nearby this town called Vienna. So what is our experience coming from FASTER? So we recognize the importance of new technology, but the new technology can improve really the emergency management, improving security, improving effectiveness of communication, and the quality of information exchange. But at the same time, sometimes there is some distance between the world of technology and the service supplies like the civil protection. So there is a continuous need of talking, of meeting to understand each other. So sometimes the technology is not able to understand what they propose, and sometimes the services are not able to communicate their needs. So FASTER was really a good experience in this field. So lesson learned from FASTER. the world of technology, supplies, and service demands must collaborate continuously. So the communication, the meeting, understanding is the only way to meet what technology, new technologies can offer and what service demands on the territory. Reliable and georeferent information and timely information are really mandatory for successful emergency management. And we saw, especially with FASTER, that new technology can really improve emergency response, increasing awareness and communication. Oh, we can make a suggestion, an answer. Typically, civil protection services have their own systems, and always integrating new technology demands some efforts. Perhaps using standard protocol, assessing standard protocols can be a successful key to make easier integration of new technology, new information in pre-existing systems. I wish to thank you for listening to this talk. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dwayne Hugans, and I'm here to speak to you about the Amish nickel mine school shooting, technology, and the incident command system. Briefly, just about my background. In 1979, I began as a career as a volunteer firefighter, not knowing where life would take me. And in the 40 plus years since, I've had many opportunities to see, experience, and grow throughout the emergency services. In 1983, I was hired as a paid firefighter in the city of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a career that spanned 28 years. During that time, I saw massive changes in the emergency services, including technological improvements from radio systems to computer systems. In 1996, I became the city's emergency manager, and after September 11th, 2001, I was a founding member of our regional emergency management task force. This task force began with nothing more than people willing to work together to help our communities. Over the years, we have been to numerous events, one of which I will speak about today. We have watched technology grow to help us to be able to better complete our mission. In 2007, I began teaching health and safety courses part-time at Millersville University. And in 2008, I was asked to start teaching emergency management courses. Then in 2012, I began a full-time career as a faculty member teaching at Millersville. Over the past 10 years, I've also developed and taught many courses for our Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the National Fire Academy. I travel around our nation each year, educating and training responders about leadership and better methods for accomplishing our goals and objectives. Today, in my time with you, I will briefly speak about a major incident in which I was involved and the collaborative efforts we used to try to make disaster management more manageable. This is the nickel mines. On October 2nd, 2006, I responded with our regional incident management team to offer assistance to the Bart Township Volunteer Fire Company. On that day, a lone gunman entered a small Amish schoolhouse and shot 10 young Amish girls, killing 5 and seriously injuring 5 others. The incident management team, or IMT, will be explained in a little bit in a later slide. The IMT had to deal with several issues, but the most challenging was the lack of technology. This area, although relatively close to several big metropolitan areas in our nation, was very rural. Cell phones did not work. There was no internet. Radio transmissions to the communication center were hit or miss and spotty at the best. The IMT was quickly inundated with hundreds of media personnel looking for answers. However, a far bigger problem. There were 5 pre-teenage girls in 5 different hospitals in 2 different states. The girls have been flown by medical evacuation helicopters. We now had to identify which girls were alive and what hospital they were in. The Amish do not have name tags, and they all dress in plain clothes. How could we get the right set of parents to the right hospital? This was even more important because the Amish do not believe in technology, so they could not fly in a helicopter. Although their normal form of transportation is horse and buggy, they will travel in a car if driven. These hospitals were hundreds of miles apart, so taking the parents to the wrong hospital would be devastating, especially if one of the girls were to perish while her parents were at the wrong hospital. The IMT got in touch with the local phone company, who came to the scene and dropped a phone line from a telephone pole to the command post. The red arrow you see points to that telephone pole. In the upper middle of the photo is the school, and in the lower left is our command vehicle. This telephone pole and this one line provided us with that one means of communication, one telephone line, but it still did not solve the problem of which girl was in which trauma center. The idea was conceived to have the medical staff use Polaroid cameras to take instant pictures of the girls, and then using fax machines, fax the pictures to our communications center, and then the communications center faxed them to us at the scene. In 2006, we did not have cameras on our cell phones, and even if we did, we could not use cell phones at the nickel mines because there was no phone reception. The parents eventually all got to the right hospitals with their daughters, who thankfully all lived. This was an international news event with hundreds of reporters and microphones taking place in a country store using their counter as a wall. The red arrow is me standing in the background. Fast forward to 2022. What would change if that incident happened today at the same location? Today, our radio system has had massive upgrades so that in over 90% of our county, we can make communications using walkie-talkies. These handheld radios are now small computers, which give us even more capability. In this photo, you see hundreds of microphones, and there was a large pile of wires and cables running to them. Today, there will be one microphone and few cables, as technology allows for the sharing of many of these devices. In 2006, we could not even use the more powerful mobile radios or our command bus radios to communicate because of the lack of technology. Our computerized cell technology has gotten much better, so even though it is still not 100% around our county or at the nickel mines, today it is much better and it has much better coverage. We have the capability to use our cell phones to take pictures and video and quickly transmit it. Even in places where phone calls cannot connect cellularly, we still often have the ability to communicate with text messaging. We also now have the capability to use online platforms such as Zoom, Teams, and even many social media sites to communicate via video means. We can simply take a phone into a facility and live stream pictures from the trauma center to the command post, quickly identifying the girls and eliminating lost time, waiting to try to identify them and get the parents moving quickly towards their child. 15 years has made a big difference in our methods and our technology. But even with all this technology, we still have some rural areas with little to any cellular service. Just recently, we saw this issue with a cellular system that comes in a hard-sided Pelican case. These cases have the technology to help multiple cell carriers feeding the computer in the case. It also has an external antenna that can be set up to expand the capability. This computer in the box allows first responders to log in with their cell phones, tablets, and computers to give connectivity. The same responders who had zero connectivity before hooking into this box, after logging into the computer, gain complete connectivity and cellular capability. These boxes, while not the last advance that will ever be made in technology, are a huge piece of our current puzzle for communications. In these last 15 years, as our technology has improved, our response capabilities have improved tenfold. The most important aspects of emergency and disaster response are communications, collaboration, and coordination. As we continue to see technological advances, we continue to be able to provide better customer service to our citizens and better safety for our responders. We are not finished, and there are still gaps to fill, which technology can assist with, such as 100% cellular coverage or 100% radio coverage, technology that can pinpoint citizens and responders when they are lost or trapped, robots that can do some of the most dangerous work, and technology that assures proper decision-making while taking out the human element. In the end, though, it is all about proper communications, and this is where technology has helped us and will continue to help us as it progresses. Technology helps us to communicate better and with more accuracy. Collaboration using national systems has also been a major advancement since 2001. After September 11, 2001, our federal government recognized that a collaborative system needed to be developed so that when events happen, our emergency services are all on the same page, speaking the same language, and using the same tools and methods. The National Incident Management System was developed and mandated for our emergency services. The system of collaboration starts with the incident commander. The incident commander used to be based upon the type of event, such as a fire or police event. However, today, incident commanders and all the leadership working on an incident are qualified by position, not title. A position can be filled by a firefighter, police officer, a fire or police lieutenant, or a fire chief or police chief, all based upon qualifications, not title. So a qualified police officer may be in charge of a fire event. This system helps make events operate and be managed based upon qualified members of the team with the right skills to handle whatever the event is. Elements of an effective incident management system. When we use these systems, they can apply to all events, large and small. It does not matter where the event is located or what type of event it is. It only matters that people are qualified to do the position for which they are assigned. Regardless of jurisdiction or agency or organizational structure, the incident, whether a small incident or a large incident, depends on using an effective system. Common terminology is so important. Members of the incident command system all speak the same language, so there are no misinterpretations. Modern technology has helped us communicate clearer and be better understood, as we now can see each other versus just talking over radios, and we can communicate better using computers and other forms of communication to make sure that we use common terminology. As a modular system, the size of the command staff grows with the incident. And then as the incident decreases in size, so too does the command staff. These systems are like building blocks. The larger or more complex the incident, the more blocks you have, and the more that need filled by qualified individuals. This ICS organizational structure is based upon the type of incident involved. So we could have a simple incident that requires a few basic command staff positions. This might be a small fire in a home. In a simple event such as this, one person can easily do multiple roles. The incident commander can be the public information officer, the liaison officer, and the operations section, accomplishing multiple tasks because it's a small, simple incident. However, once we start to deal with complex incidents, then we need more personnel to fill the boxes as our modular structure starts to grow. As these incidents get bigger, such as the nickel mine shooting, more positions need to be filled due to the complexity of the event. These events require that more positions are filled with qualified operators. Sometimes a simple event can grow into a complex event requiring a high level of coordination. The ICS system allows us to work seamlessly as positions begin to be filled as needed. What are the incident commander's responsibilities? The incident commander always starts with three basic objectives based upon priorities, which always start with one thing: safety of human life. If this is the starting point for the person in charge, it allows for the event or incident to have a good starting baseline. So as you see in an incident, we always worry about life safety first, then incident stabilization, and finally property conservation. Collaboration, as mentioned, is so vitally important in the basics of the incident command system. So the basic guiding principles, which start with proper policies and procedures, all acquired through training. We always start with these basic policies and procedures or standard operating guidelines. The system also makes sure that any person in any leadership role only supervises 5 to 7 personnel, keeping the span of control for leadership manageable. It has been proven that people cannot manage more than about 5 to 7 people. And the most important objective is that we have unity of command, so that no person, group, or division reports to more than one leader. Having unity of command assures that the team objectives will be accomplished, and a team is not reporting to more than one leader with different objectives. This is the famous phrase that no person can report to 2 masters. So complexity analysis. Determining how complex an event is will be vital in choosing the correct organization and the correct methods for collaboration and coordination. On this slide, there are a few of the factors that need to be considered when judging an event, complexities, and determining what types of team is needed, as will be shown in the next slide. So if we look at the determining factors, we have to look at what is that again: threat to life and property, the resource threatened and value at risk, weather and other influences, resources committed, and safety personnel. All of these factors go into the decision-making process as an event expands and grows larger. Just briefly, an incident management team, or IMT, is a highly trained group of individuals that respond to major or complex events and either assist the command team or can take over the command of the incident. As you see in this slide, there are 5 types of incident management teams. You know, a type 1 team is what we see at a major incident, a wildfire, or a catastrophic weather event. When our IMT was responsible for overseeing the nickel mines event, we went to this event and oversaw everything from the time of the shooting through the end of the funerals for the 5 girls that perished. Our team spent 6 days on the scene. Our team was responsible for everything from overall command to public information, logistics for stress management, to the tearing down of the school at the end of the event. As we have IMTs, each individual on an IMT is trained for one of or more specialties. For instance, I'm a qualified public information officer, and I'm also a liaison officer. In an IMT, team members come from multiple agencies, which is okay, because they are certified and qualified to do the position for which they are deployed. So as mentioned, you can see there are 5 types or levels of teams. The type 1 teams are large and handle major events, as I mentioned, and have a higher level of training and competency. The type 5 team is a smaller, usually local team for handling small local events. Many of the teams in our nation are type 2 and type 3 teams. So a friend of mine is one of our task force leaders, and he always talks about how we will be judged after an event. So he always talked about the technical score. Did you make the problem go away? And then you have the artistic score, how you were perceived by the public. That perception falls on us, the emergency responders. If our technology doesn't work, this can harm our chances for success. If our people do not collaborate, coordinate, and communicate properly, all the technology in the world won't help us solve the problem. We had a lot of issues with technology at the nickel mines, but through our collaboration, teamwork, and instant command systems, in the end, it was judged a success. Thank you for allowing me to take a few minutes to speak with you about these important issues. Please feel free to reach out and contact me at any time if you have any questions. Thank you and have a great day.
Hello, good morning everyone. Ohayo gozaimasu. Hajime mashite Julio desu. My name is Julio Ruiz. I am from Spain. Also, Yorisuki onegaishimasu. I'm delighted to be here and to share my experience of what I felt during the pandemic in Madrid. It was really hard at the time. And 2 years ago, I was testing a faster tool for an European Commission study with a commission with many partners at that time, and then the pandemic came. So I want to share in this meeting what it means for an emergency doctor in the pandemic. I work in the Madrid emergency service in an emergency unit, an ambulance, and also in a helicopter. So I'm used to deal with critical patients and conditions of many different illness and injuries. Madrid is a big city with more than 4 million people. We are many doctors and nurses and technicians in the extra hospital life, treating patients outside the hospitals. So we are used to deal with patients and transport them to the hospitals. Before, I was treating patients with Ebola virus. 5 years ago, we had to bring 2 patients from Africa to Spain with a really deadly virus that could kill us. This is me with my team. I remember that day that I had to take all the clothes, and I was in the shower for maybe 30 minutes, rushing and trying to keep clean, but then everything went normal, and we went to a normal life in Madrid. Spain, we are used to party, with no minimum distance, and we like to go at night and to share a lot of with many people. We kiss each other when we meet. We like to touch. We like to share, to laugh, and to dance, and social life with friends and partners. This is in December 2019, and with our European Commission consortium from these new technologies that I told you before. We were sharing a meeting, and at night we went to Madrid, and with some friends also from Italy, and they were telling us what was happening in Italy at that time, that some people were experienced this illness, respiratory illness, that we didn't know too much. Well, we were scared, but not too much. We were not covering our faces, and we didn't thought about what was coming. In China, they began to build these massive hospitals, and we were getting them to be a little bit scared about what was going on. At that time, I can't remember seeing patients with fever, or we didn't thought about that. Recalling that in the memory, maybe I could treat maybe one or two fever patients that we didn't know what was going on around December. But then in January and February of 2020, with my team expert in this nuclear, biological, and chemical hazmat, we start treating patients and going to houses and bringing from some hospitals this respiratory illness that we didn't understand, and the patients were dying really quickly, with the saturation, patients that they were normal at that time. So it was really scary. We put our Ebola equipment, and then we started moving patients from one hospital to the biggest hospitals. I remember when I went to a nursing home with many elderly, and then I saw people coughing and with fever, but I didn't know that it was really spreading at that time that fast. I was lucky to wear all the equipment that we had in the Ebola crisis, and in my department, my team was wearing, with gloves, mask, every part of the equipment. Some doctors told us that it wasn't necessary, that it was not too much, but we didn't know. And in the ambulance is a really small place, and we had to deal with the patients and moving and treating, and it's really difficult to treat with all the equipment, but it's also, you feel that you are protected, and this is really important, no? to continue our life. But then it spread, and as you all know from many places, in Madrid, in Spain, it was really crazy. People were dying around 800 per day. So the government has to stop and confine and told the people to stay at home, and it was necessary at that time, and we didn't know what was happening, but we had to stop, the contagious disease and the contact from victim to victim and spreading of the virus. At that time, it was really something that it was an honor also to be part of this personnel that was in the street trying to take care of the people that was staying at home. So it was really difficult to understand that it was my mission, and I was lucky to be outside. I could see many other people from different hospitals. I could speak with other people, not staying at home, but it was also a big responsibility. And I didn't know what was going on and when it was going to stop this. I was seeing at that time many patients. Everyone was asking for help in their homes, and we had to wear these equipment. I usually will work with my nurse and my technicians, but sometimes I had to go only by myself alone. And in the ambulance, we treat the patients, with oxygen and everything that we could do to help them. But sometimes it was really difficult or impossible. I went to many houses with really old people that were asking for help. And when you went there, you saw that the saturation was really low, that they needed oxygen, they needed a respirator, and that they didn't have in the hospital. They were telling us that they were really at most, that they don't have any more spaces. So it was really shame, but we didn't stop treating or taking care of any patient. I gave some people morphine to help them to feel less dyspnea, this breathless feeling of not getting enough oxygen, and I take care of everyone. And also my team, and also everyone that I know, every sanitary or health worker were taking care of every patient at homes, at hospitals, or everywhere. But it was really difficult. I can remember one day in my life that I can't forget, and it was in this street, this number 58. There was an old lady with her sister, also really old, and they both had a fever, breathless, desaturation. I know it was COVID. They also had many problems with their legs. They couldn't move. One was in the bed. So it was really difficult to take them to the hospital. I asked for an ambulance also to come to pick her, but she said that it was enough, and that she was seeing many people dying, and it was her time, and she was not going to the hospital, and maybe that place could be for another person with more years to come. It was really difficult for me, but she only asked me to call to her son. She couldn't mark the number, but I did, and I put her in the phone speaker and she was saying goodbye to her family through the phone that I was holding in my hand, shaking. I was so proud of this lady and many others, but this one was, I went down, and the people from the different houses were clapping, like saying, everyone, health workers, you are doing right, you are the best. But I couldn't feel that. I was trying to think about how can we get more respirators or more places or ICUs for more patients, because this was really crazy. So I was really afraid to bring the virus to my family, and then I had the opportunity to live in a motorhome. So I say goodbye to my family and I start living by my own in a motorhome. I had everything that I had, a small place, a place that I could clean with hypochlorite, no, to clean the surface. I couldn't see my sons, my dogs, my wife, but it was really important for me to feel that I couldn't at that time spread the virus to my family. And then I started living there I lived there for 2 months. I went to the hospital, I went to the ambulance, I treat and transferred patients from one place to another. These months were horrible, terrible for everyone. I felt alone at that time, but I could listen to the news and many people from different news reporters, they were trying to share the experience and to ask me to stay in the television to share my vision of the problem that I was having. But I didn't feel really proud or important. No, I was a little grain of this massive health workers trying to deal with the virus, and then it then began to spread to different places, and it was not only China, Italy, or Spain. It was a pandemic, of course, around the globe. I remember this night. It was the first night that we opened the IFEMA pavilion. It was a really big place to keep the patients in a closed environment and that we could treat for them. We put many oxygen bottles, as you see. They didn't have enough intimacy for them. It was really crazy. The patients then started to came and to arrive, and I was one of the doctors that was treating that patient that day. But it was amazing, and I'm so proud of my teams and my college nurses, technicians, everyone was treating the patients, and then it grew from 400 to maybe 800 per day. Sorry about my dogs. It's difficult to be here explaining this. I would love to do it, with you in person, seeing the eyes and seeing the reactions, but I know it's the only way that I can do this online. And I'm so proud, and it's an honor to be also with you in this meeting. Well, I also had many friends and workers, and I learned a lot about treating patients. I used to do ultrasonography, and I stayed at night with many patients. I could just seeing one patient, you knew what was going on, and we then started treating with different treatments and different pills and drugs, and seeing which one was the better. And I can say now that these pavilions and massive pavilions for emergency patients, that people thought that it was going to be like a place to go or that it wasn't that. It wasn't that. It was a place to live and to recover, and from then it was really good. I'm so proud of my government from Madrid that could manage to do this, and my bosses and what we could do at that time, medical staff and everything, to continue the treatment from one hospital that couldn't have the place to another. So, the communication, the logistics from one place to another was really crazy. So the Suma 112, my company, the public service that I work, managed to do it, to be the one that could manage every bed that could need one respirator, one patient, and we can move to many hospitals. We were doing around 10 transfers from one hospital to another per day, critical ill patients, with intubation and sedation patients. And to these pavilions, we're moving around 50 patients or 100 patients per day also to treat these patients. It was really crazy, but I'm, seeing the images now, and I'm proud that what we did. As you can see, many reporters and TVs and photographers wanted to send this to other countries to show what was going on, and wishing that it couldn't happen to them. But we keep going to many places. We keep seeing patients, ill patients, elderly, and it was crazy, the news, and then many people died. Too many people. I don't know. Maybe at that time we had to thought about moving patients from one country to another, maybe to treat these patients, by train or by plane, or I don't know what could I have done before. But this pandemic was crazy around the globe, so it was not only a problem here. One of the worst days of my life was when one of the calls was from my friend and colleague who was also ill, breathless, and I knew that this COVID was really bad, and that if we didn't intubate this patient and sedate and get to a respirator in a UC hospital, he could die. I had to bring my friend and to drive with my team to, with the personal equipment for maybe 2 hours, and it was really hard, and I was sweating. And when you have to treat your family or your friend, you feel that any error that you could make, it will be enormous responsibility. But after 2 months, I knew, with my one call, that he was recovering and he was going well. So this was one of the best moments after that I could feel. And life continues, and these technologies that we had to test, we had to do it in this pandemic with the COVID around. The technologies that we wanted to test for disasters continues. So we did a drill and exercise, a pilot in Madrid around an earthquake simulated, and this is our tents, with one tent to treat COVID patients in an emergency USAR situation. This urban search and rescue that our team is getting around in an international INSARAG group, from United Nations. This is our social tent where we used to eat all together and to share experience, and to continue living in an international mission or in our daily lives. We had to keep the distance, eating alone, and it was really difficult. But we tested the technologies, and we get moving. And now I can say that everyone everywhere did the right thing. I hope that politicians and and the governments could understand that. I know they had to deal with difficult decisions, keeping places, vaccination, but now we are getting out of this. The vaccines, the treatments, the health workers, and everyone in their houses could do now. And this winter, I can say that we are getting out of this. I hope we can deal with it, and I could stay again with my family, with my dogs, and well, I hope that one day I could go to Japan and to see mangas and these Japanese things that you have. I'm in love with your culture and you with your right on style that you have, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this symposium and to share this experience with you. I hope you be well, and thank you all.
Welcome everyone. This is a short presentation from Hellenic Rescue Team of Attica, or HRTA. My name is Harry Georgiou. I am the LEAR, the scientific advisor, and an active field member with the team for 13 years now. In this presentation, I will try to give you a brief context of real-world search and rescue operations in urban environment from two large-scale deployments we had for flash floods in Mandra in 2017 and in rapid wildfires in Mati 2018. The core material of this presentation is associated with a paper we published in IceCram 2020 conference in the practitioners session with the first responder view of these two events in Greece, and we had very positive feedback from it. You can find the references in the end for anyone who wants to see the entire paper. So an outline of this presentation. First, a few things about our team and the context for search and rescue operations in urban environment. Then some details about these two specific events in Mandra and in Mati, one with floods, associated with floods, and one associated with wildfire. And then some comments about gaps and limitations of using the technology, the technologies and the various tools, and some conclusions and lessons from these events. So regarding our team, we are a team of volunteers active since 2000, maybe 1999. We are, of course, in the general plan of mobilization with the Greek Secretary of Civil Protection, and we are called when a large event happens or when a specialized search and rescue operation is necessary according to our skills and specializations. I don't have many details about the team because we don't have much time, and we could discuss this in the live session. But we are active in 3 domains: in land search and rescue, in mountains, and in rivers and swift water, and all this stuff. Also in urban search and rescue, for example, in earthquakes and fires and floods and all these things in urban environment. And also in sea search and rescue and scuba diving search and rescue. with special trainings and certifications in each field. And we have about 15 to 20 full deployments every year in such situations. In general, for urban and suburban areas, one specific difficulty is that the urban environment is very dense in terms of population. And this, of course, is a higher risk for having multiple casualties and trapped people. We have saturation in the communication networks, either from damages in the antennas or from increased usage during these events. So communication is very difficult in these areas. And in both cases, as you can see in the last point, in both cases, in these disaster areas, although we could be some 1 or 2 kilometers from the center of a large city, the first responders should plan and deploy as if they were in the middle of a desert, because we do not know if we have access to water, to food, to medical equipment, to communications, to electricity. Everything may be affected. It depends on the scale of the event and the nature of the event. So, about these two events, this is a brief summary of the first event with the flash flood was in Mandra in western Attica, in the western region of Attica, and was associated with wildfires a few months before, in the summer before this event, which swept through the mountain slope just above this area. And it was the perfect conditions for a flash flood with increased precipitations that November. And the result was 23 casualties and extensive urban damages. In Mati, this is a small village in eastern Attica. It was an event that it was an exceptional event in many views, both in meteorological conditions and the way that the fire moved into this urban area. And the result was more than 100 casualties and several more in ICU treatment for many months after the event. So this was the decisive factor, so to say. This is a satellite image of how this event evolved. You can see the flow of the main flow of the water. This is Eastern Attica, and this is what happened inside this small region of Eastern Attica. As you can see, there is an entire river running through this town, and you can understand that the result from all this was devastating in these areas, especially in choke points, as you can see, in crossroads and in areas that the debris was blocked and accumulated the rest of all this material that was brought down by water. Our team was deployed from day one, from the first night after the event, and we did search and rescue operations for evacuations in blocked buildings, in trapped victims, and of course for missing people. And we were there for several days searching for missing people, actually casualties. until we found all the missing victims. There are several comments about where these victims were found, not where it was expected. Details you can see in the paper. This is a satellite map of the situation. There were actually two fires, one in near Corinthos, in Kineta, in the western part, and one that you can see in the right side, in the eastern part, where this area is, where Mati is. So another factor was that many forces from the fire department were already deployed in another area, and they had to move late afternoon in order to reach the other side of Attica. This is the area above this village, above Mati, about 5:30 in the afternoon, when the fire started to be visible in this area at the bottom of the mountain. This is about half an hour later. As you can see, it's very extensive, and of course it moved very fast towards the beach. And this is another hour later. By 6:30, the fire had reached the beach. So people had little to no time to evacuate the area, and actually they had very few escape routes, and not from the Mati area, from the village, but for everyone that had not yet reached the village or was a bit far away, so they could just keep away from the fire front. This is a screenshot of a plot of what happened in terms of time and speed of the fire front. As you can see, within 50 minutes or so, the fire crossed about 5.5 kilometers, and with an average speed of about 4 kilometers per hour, but much higher in speed in many spots inside the village, as we show and as many witnesses told us afterwards. When the front reached the beach, the only escape for the people there was to go into the sea. Fortunately, there were a few spots that were accessible from the town, from some roads into shallow waters. So many people stayed there for several hours until they were evacuated. In other spots, there are rocks and small cliffs, so it was very difficult for people to even go into the sea. Actually, we found a few victims that had fallen into the rocks from these cliffs, because also the visibility was not very good, as you can see here. One of the special things about this event was that maybe for the first time, the main evacuation of people was done by the sea, with small boats that were able to go close to the beach because it was with shallow waters. This is the way that we helped about 735 people to be evacuated into the Rafina port, which is a couple of kilometers away. and all these people were evacuated by sea, by small boats with fishermen and our own. Another thing, another lesson that was from this event was the lethality of having uncoordinated evacuation by cars. This is the main local road running in parallel to the beach, but with no escape routes. About 120 cars were trapped in there, and you can see the result. Of course, you can understand that there were many people trapped inside these cars. The local temperature in this spot, in this high density fire, was that the temperature was very high, so that many metals like aluminum melted on the spot. And of course, you can understand that it's very difficult for someone even to get out of a car and find an escape route in this situation. Regarding the speed of the transition of the fire front, another very exceptional thing about this fire was that the main fuel for it was pine trees in the area, and this made the front explosive. The pines were exploding, and they were bursting into several directions. We had the animals that had caught fire running around, spreading the fire. The pines themselves hitting people on the ground, or hitting an apartment, for example, in the second or third floor. So this, combined with the very strong winds, resulted in, as you can see here, resulted in having, for example, houses, buildings that had the second and the third floor in flames, while the lower floors were almost intact. Also, smoke and disorientation is also a very bad thing to have. It kills instantly, and this is such a situation. This is a small yard just above the rocks, with a small alley leading down to the beach. But in this situation, this afternoon, this door, as you can see here, it was locked, and the result was that disoriented people trying to escape were trapped in this small yard, and we found 23 people dead in this small area. A unique feature about this search and rescue operation in terms of deployment was that we had several different aspects of a context of the mission running in parallel. First, of course, for land and urban search and rescue, which was the main part of the operation. The second was the shore and the rocks just below these areas, because many people were trapped in there, and some victims were found there. And the third was sea and surface search and scuba diving search, underwater search, because some people were trying to swim away, and many of them got lost, and we had to do search for missing persons in all these cases, with surface search and with underwater search for several days after the event. But the main thing, the main mission was going house to house, room by room, actually, in each house, searching for missing persons, for victims actually. And it gets very complicated after a few days, keeping in mind that inside these houses we had food and meat rotting, and it was very difficult to distinguish. Actually, you had to search very meticulously to make sure that there was no victim there. It was just food or some meat in a refrigerator. One last thing about the Mati situation is that it is extremely important to have self-organized teams of volunteers working in the area from the first hours, actually, organizing things and distributing humanitarian and medical aid, because unfortunately, in these situations, central coordination and organization comes much later, 24 to 48 hours at best, and in some cases, several days later. So it was very, very important to have these teams and all this cooperation. So just an assessment, overall assessment for both events. A summary, actually. What we learned was that the important thing, the important lesson to have from all these things, and the things that we list here in a bit more detail, is that with every tool, we get a bit more information about the situation. All these things you can read in the paper in much more detail. These are the links, and of course you can contact our team if more information for more information and for other discussions about it. We will be happy to assist in any situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming. I would like to add one more thing now, which is a request from one of our Japanese collaborators who really wanted to share this message with you. I will close the meeting right after this message, and then we will have this also broadcasted tomorrow in Japanese. And I really encourage you to attend all of the sessions at Ceres and register to the links that I have provided in the website for tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and also for Friday. Friday, we will have a joint session between this symposium and the Ceres event. And I highly encourage you, as they will have the opportunity to discuss and ask questions to the audience. Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to share one very short video with a message from Mr. Tanaka. Okay, I'll just show it to you in just a few minutes. Where's the video? Sorry, I'm looking for the video. I'm having a technical difficulty. So let's see if I can see it. Play button. Where is the button? Give me a second, sorry. Let me try it again. So share. Share. Open. It's not working. It's my application, but I don't see it. Okay. Okay, I found it. Sorry about that.
この度のシンポジウムは、大規模災害におけるファーストレスポンダーのための先端技術に関することがテーマです。私がここで取り扱う研究テーマは、自然災害が主です。この度のテーマもそうだと思われます。今、ウクライナとヨーロッパ周辺諸国では、人為的な戦争により多くの人たちの命と生活が脅かされています。毎日のウクライナの惨状に心を痛め、特に多くの子供たちが被害に遭う状況には言葉も出ません。また、皆さんが悲しむ姿を見るたび、涙が出て仕方ありません。人の命の重さに変えられるものなんてないはずです。ウクライナの人たちの命と生活、そして未来ある子供たちの命を守るため、一刻も早く戦闘が終わることを祈るばかりです。
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation, and I hope to see you during the sessions at Ceres on Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, and in the joint session on Friday. Thank you very much. Have a good day and a good night.
Thank you, Yuri. Goodbye.